Hey guys, welcome to CS School channel. In this video, we are going to specifically look at what happens when we enter a URL in our web browsers. Okay, so we will understand what are the different things that are happening behind the scenes, what the web browser does, what the DNS does, what happens when we connect to the server, and how our web page is downloaded to the browser. Okay, so we will see all those things in this video, and we will go over each of the step that happens in between. Okay, so let's get started. So I have opened my web browser, which is Chrome. Okay, so this is my default browser and I use for my day-to-day task. Now let's just start typing google.com in this browser. Okay, so if I start typing, you will see a list of suggestions in the drop down. Okay, so what is this list? This is the websites that I have visited in the past. Basically, browser will have a cache of its own, okay, a history of its own, and it will store that history somewhere. Okay, and when I start typing, it will give me suggestions based on the history of the websites that I have visited. These are the suggestions from the browser, and it has picked those suggestions from its local cache. So basically, as soon as you start typing, you will get a list of suggestions. Browser will go through its history and show us the list of suggestions based on the history and what you have typed in the search bar. Okay, so hope you are clear with the first step. Now let's go to the second step. Now after once we have entered the URL, there are two things that can happen. If the URL that you have entered is a valid URL, then our browser will open the web page. Okay, so let's say we have type something like google.com. Okay, browser knows that google.com is a website. Okay, it's a valid URL with a web address, right? Then it will open that web page. And let's say if we are not enter any URL, we have typed something like learn JavaScript, which is not a URL, right? It's not a URL, it's a search term that we are asking the browser. Then Chrome will open the Google with the search term search in the search bar. Okay, so basically Google will give us the search results for that particular search term. Okay, so let's look at this in action. So let's say I typed javascript.info. Okay, now this is actually a website on the internet with this URL. Okay, if I press enter, the browser will open this particular web page. Okay, so this is the web page for javascript.info. Okay, in other cases, let's say I have typed javascript something like learn javascript. Okay, so in this case, as this is not a valid URL, browser will open Google with that search term. Okay, so these are the results from Google by learn javascript. Okay, so Chrome does this. If you are using any other browser, something like Bing or something like let's say Safari, then you will see different browsers opening up. Okay, so Edge will open its Microsoft's own search engine, Bing, and I think Safari opens Chrome only, right? So these are the two things that will happen. Okay, so browser needs to decide whether the thing that you are entering is a valid URL or not. If it is a valid URL, then it will open the website. If it is not a valid URL, then it will open the Google search with that particular search term. Okay, so hope you are clear with this step as well. Now before moving further, we need to understand what a URL is. Okay, so the full form of URL is Universal Resource Locator. So basically it is used to identify web pages and servers on the internet. Okay, so this is the URL of, let's say, google.com/news. Okay, so there are different parts of the URL. So let's look at those parts. So the first part, this HTTPS, is called a scheme. Okay, there can be two types of scheme, HTTP or HTTPS. Okay, there are other types of scheme as well, but these are the two prominent schemes on the internet. Okay, the second part, google.com, is actually a domain name. Okay, so this is the domain name of the google.com. And the third part, so whatever comes after the slash and till the end, it's called as path or resources. Okay, so this particular thing is able to identify a particular path or particular resources on google.com server. Okay, so these are the different parts of a URL. Now you must ask yourself, in the web browser we have typed google.com or javascript.info. We haven't added any HTTP or HTTPS kind of thing. Okay, so this thing is done by browser for us. So browser appends this scheme to the URL and it makes the URL complete. Okay, so whatever we type, browser will append the scheme to the URL and it will generate the URL. Cool. So hope we are clear with the URL now. Now what will happen if we enter the URL? So see, browser or the entire internet works on IP addresses. It doesn't works on the URLs. Okay, so when we type google.com, browser must identify what is the IP address of that google.com. Okay, so it will perform what is called as DNS lookup. Okay, so basically it is a list of mappings between domain name and their IP addresses. Okay, browser actually stores a cache of commonly used DNS names and its IP addresses like google.com. Okay, so google.com is widely used, so browser will store the IP address of that google.com in its cache. Okay, so it will look up in the cache first. Now if it finds the IP address, that's fine, that's great, then we will connect with the Google server. But in a case if the browser doesn't find the IP address, then we need to connect with a DNS server. Now what is the DNS server? So DNS server is basically a server which stores the mapping between DNS names and IP addresses, right? So browser will connect with this DNS server and it will fetch the IP address from this DNS server. Now this entire process of connecting to a DNS server and fetching the IP address is very long, it's very complicated, so I will not go into detail. Just remember that when the browser doesn't find the IP address of a particular domain in its local cache, it will connect with a DNS server. In most of the cases, our ISP will be our DNS server, right? So in my case, I am using a Geo's internet, so my browser will connect with Geo's server to find out what is the IP address of google.com. Okay, so if you want to verify, there is actually a command which you can run and check your DNS provider. Okay, so let me just do that. So the command which I'm going to use is scutil-DNS. So if you enter this command, you will get at the end the DNS configuration for your particular system. Okay, so I am having two DNS, this name server 0, and this is an IPv6 address. Okay, and this is an IPv4 address. Okay, so these are my DNS providers. So whenever I type google.com, if the browser doesn't know the IP address of google.com, it will reach out to these servers. So let me just open this URL. So I will paste it and see the Geo site is opening. So that's the proof that my ISP is a Geo. Okay, so hope you are clear with this entire DNS lookup process. Now let's move on to the next step that happens. So once we have the IP address of the server, our browser will connect with the server. Okay, now the connection which is made by the browser with the server is called as TCP connection. Okay, this TCP connection is made by different ways. Okay, so if you use HTTP as your protocol or as your scheme, the connection will be insecure connection. Okay, so let's say if an attacker kind of connects his computer with the wire in which the data is transferred, he can easily read whatever is being sent between browser and server, and which is very dangerous, right? And if you use HTTPS as your scheme, the connection which is made between browser and server is very secure. So in this case, even if the attacker connects with the connection between you and the server, it won't be able to read whatever is being sent because the data is highly encrypted. HTTP is basically an insecure connection and HTTPS is a secure connection. Okay, so once we got the IP address, we connected with the server, and now we can actually begin transferring the data between browser and server. Now once the connection is established, the server can actually start sending the files to the browser. Okay, so your web page is nothing but a files on the server. Okay, the files which is written in HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Okay, so browser basically asks the web page from the server will send the HTML to the browser. Now in that HTML there can be CSS and JavaScript files linked. Okay, so browser will again ask the server the CSS and JavaScript files, and the server will eventually send us the CSS and JavaScript file. And once browser has received all the files, it will start rendering the web page. Okay, so whatever is written in HTML page, it will be shown there. Whatever styles are applied to that HTML elements is applied by CSS, and the logic is written in JavaScript. Okay, so basically this request and response mechanism happens multiple times, and we actually get the rendered web page on our browser. Okay, so let me just show that how it happens. Let me just open the developer tools. Okay, so you can open this developer tools by using command option I. Okay, and in the network tab, I will see all the requests between clients and server. So if I refresh this page, see we get, so actually our browser is making this much request to the server. So the first request is actually the web page that we are getting. So if I open it, we are making request to this particular domain and it is a get request. Okay, and this is the response that we are getting with the status cost 200. So if I go to the preview, this is actually the HTML page that we are getting. Okay, so this is the content that we are seeing, just that the styles are applied after we get this response. Okay, so in the response you will actually see the HTML code that we are getting. Okay, after that we are making the calls to this JavaScript files. Okay, and some of these calls are for the images and other documents on this site. Okay, so hope you are clear with this last step, which is rendering the web page step. So hope you are clear with what happens when we enter an URL in the web browser. If you have any doubt, do ask me in the comment section. I'll be more than happy to help you. Do subscribe to our channel. It makes us more motivated to make such kind of videos. Thanks for watching.